One of my most popular recipe videos on YouTube is my classic beef bourguignon. This has also been criticized as being excessively complicated, which I understand, but the point was to show the classic original method and not how it would be done in a modern restaurant. So, here, finally, after several years, is a modern restaurant version of beef bourguignon, although it should really be called a beef stew because there are some technical differences between this and true bourguignon. The flavor is very much French, though, as you'll see. It's delicious.
The first step is cutting up the meat. I'm beginning with either short loin or sirloin. You need something that's got some marbling in it. Don't make it too thin. And I recommend using Jacquard device on this. Jacquard makes the ones that have 3 blades and 1 blade. For something like this, you want the one with 1 blade, because trying to stomp 3 blades through it will be very, very difficult. It won't go easily at all. The meat's just too thick. So you really want to have both of these devices available to you. You don't have to do this, but the more fibers you cut, the more tender this will end up being in the end. And it's worth your time, especially if you already have these devices. Okay. Now, also, of course, the grain runs this way, so you're using the Jacquard in this direction. Now, we begin cutting it up. You want it into about 1-inch cubes. This, and just go through and work your way across the rest of the meat. And if you run into sections that have huge amount of fat like this, just get rid of the fat. We don't need giant pockets of fat like this. And then we grind up the spices. I've got a teaspoon of dark brown sugar. Now I'm using dried tomatoes here. These are available in a lot of stores if you look for them. You just probably haven't seen them. You can also dry them yourself if you want. It's another topic that's mentioned in my second volume of my cookbook. I'm using green peppercorns in this case. You can use black. And I'm using coarse salt. The coarse salt is as an abrasive for the sake of the tomatoes, because those don't want to break up too easy. The coarse salt will help grind them. Then we have the meat that's been cubed up. I'm going to put the ground spices on, and also the herbs. I pre-mixed all those herbs that you saw in the listing there at the top. And then this is going to get mixed up by hand first. And then after this has been mixed, now we're going to add that tablespoon of flour and mix it again. I have a large skillet here, 28 centimeters. I'm heating about 22 grams of butter and 22 grams of oil. And I'm going to let this come up to a bubbling point before we add the meat to it. The heat's on 8. Out of 1 to 10, it's on 8, because this meat is cold and it's going to be chilling it down as soon as it hits the pan. When the butter is starting to sizzle here, you can put all the meat in at once, because we're not looking to get that deep caramelization that we are sometimes. We're just looking to get nice brown on it. In fact, we want to be careful not to overcook it, because we've got these herbs on the outside of the meat. We don't want to burn them. So we're just looking to give it a nice browning here. Heat's still on 8 though, because there's a lot of meat in that pan and it's cold. After 3 or 4 minutes, you begin turning them over. Make sure that you get pieces brown on all sides. But again, not deep dark caramelization. We just want to get rid of the red. So this is going to cook for a total of about 6-7 minutes. That's all we're going to cook this for right now. Yeah, it's been about 6 minutes now, just under, and some of the fat is rendering. You can see there's a lot more liquid in the pan suddenly. So I've got the braising dish here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to transfer this off to the braising dish next. Okay, here's the meat in the braising dish. Pan's empty. Of course. Now, I'm going to put these carrots and onions in. I'm not going to stir them around too much, because I really want to actually get some blackening on these. And I'm going to drain the juices from this fat from this braising dish back in here. I'll stir it one time now, because just to distribute the fat from this. And then I'm going to actually let this sit without stirring it for 2 or 3 minutes. Really want to get some deep color on these vegetables. Okay, here we are after about 3 minutes. I have not stirred the pan. It's still on heat setting 8 all this time. As you can see, we're starting to get some charring on those carrots and onions. I can give it a little bit more though. I'm just going to mix it around a little bit and let it sit for just a little bit more. Do it again. We've got some good dark spots on here. As you can see, this is starting to get quite dark. Now we're going to add in the passata, about an ounce, about 30 grams, and the paprika. So let's stir this around for a couple minutes, get this going real good. It's almost ready to have the meat added back in now. The meat goes back in, along with whatever juices ran off of this. And 80 milliliters of the wine, not all of it, just 80 milliliters. And the celery leaf, dried celery leaf. Now I can turn the heat down a little bit from 8 to 6. Finally, I'm going to reduce this. And we're going to cook this down until the wine is just a glaze. Burn off some of the alcohol and thicken this up. It won't take long. Just a couple, 2 or 3 minutes here. Okay, here we have it. About 2 minutes later, you can see that most of the liquid's been either evaporated or absorbed on the surface of that floured meat. And now this is going to get transferred to a braising dish again. And here we have it ready for the braise. Now I've got, normally I use 1 bay leaf, but I kind of got a couple of small ones here, so I'll put 2 in. And a whole head of garlic. All I did here is I just sliced the top of the garlic off so that it's exposed. This is gonna cook along with it, as you'll see. Yeah, and this is ready for the oven. And here we have it, 2.5 hours later. I'll get this head of garlic out of here first. Set that off to the side, let that cool down. We're going to come back to that in a minute. These bay leaves out of here. Give it a little stir. I'm going to let it cool just a little bit before I separate the meat off of there. We'll just let it cool down just a little bit first. A few minutes later here, lift this meat out with a slotted spoon. Transfer this to a bowl. Now into a non-stick saucepan. We're going to add all the liquid remains from this braising dish. And the rest of wine, it's 120 milliliters of wine. Now we've got this roasted garlic clove here. You need to take the back of a spoon, dig out these cloves, these individual cloves, and that's going to go into it. It'll take you a couple minutes to do it. Try not to get the paper in it. And you've got all that in. Stir it, begin reducing it. Now here's the point, you're going to add that demi-glace, a couple tablespoons of demi-glace if you have it. You don't have to, but it will give it much more richness and much better depth of flavor. Bring it up to a good simmer. And continue reducing this. Now you have to taste it. As it starts getting thick, you have to taste it and add salt. It definitely will need salt. And if some MSG got in there, you know, well, then you're in a restaurant, because that's what we would put in it as well. But you don't have to, it's up to you. Also, the amount of reduction is up to you. How much sauce do you want? Personally, I like this very thick. But some people don't. Some people like a pool of sauce in it. It's your dish. Do what you like. But you have to adjust the salt when it gets close to the volume that you want. Then that way you don't end up adding too much salt. It doesn't become too salty. And when you've got it down to the thickness that you want, and you've adjusted the salt and possibly MSG, then you simply recombine it with the meat, and you're ready for plating or storage and reheating the next day, whatever whatever you're doing with it. It's all set.
If you want to know more about my adventures as a chef around the world and have some great laughs along the way, be sure to check out the video tour of my book, 40 Years in One Night. It's up on YouTube right now. Click the link. If you like my videos, look for my cookbook, now available through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and other internet bookseller sites. Also look for my cocktail book, Cocktails of the South Pacific and Beyond, Advanced Mixology, available through Amazon online.